They could say, look, it's not for lack of effort that some of these things are turning out the way it is, but maybe communication. You're an expert in that. How big or important is communication in the scheme of things?
It's central. You know, I keep saying this thing. When it comes to leadership, communication is not just what you say, the policy documents you circulate around, the kind of media conferences you hold, what your spokesmen and women say. What people want to see in terms of the ultimate reliable qualification, communication is what you do. It's what you do. People want to see what you do. That is what animates them. That is what inspires them. That is what makes people take decisions. And what we've seen the government has done over the past 5 months has been absolute nothing. There has been no administration. There is no policy on aviation. There is no policy on education. There is no policy on power. There is no policy on infrastructural development. If there are policies, we have had no team to drive these policies, meaning that we have the bureaucracy, we have the people, but we do not have actual administration happening because these policies have not been driven in a way and by the personnel that can make a material difference in the lives of the people. And this is, I suppose, you know, the function of government to make sure that the people fare a lot better anytime we have this cycle of elections. So we've voted people, they occupy the bureaucracy, but we are not seeing that kind of material change that the people expected.
I'm just wondering though, do you think that we're yet to appreciate where really we are in terms of the world economy and even the Nigerian economy itself? Just yesterday, I think it was announced that Deutsche Bank, one of the biggest banks in the world, is firing 15,000 of its workers and moving out of some countries in a bid to streamline its operations and ensure that it remains profitable. Yeah. And some people say that that's the general mood of the world economy as it stands currently. Are we yet to fully appreciate just where Nigeria stands in the middle of that?
Well, you see, all economies may be interlinked in some sense, but the actual running of each economy is the responsibility of the respective governments, the governments of every country. In this country, the government simply hasn't demonstrated this kind of, you know, sense of urgency. For instance, if it is true, and it is true that we've seen this kind of volatility in the oil sector over the past 1 year or so, you would expect a new administration that has come on the platform of change to quickly set up a cabinet that will then see how we can diversify the economy. The fact that they haven't done that means they do not appreciate the kind of sense of urgency that the kind of global economic meltdown, you know, has occasioned. So you're absolutely correct, but my sense is that if we have this kind of recession happening in many economies, Brazil, Russia, and the rest of them, these are economies that are dependent on natural resources. And you find that there are specific attentions these governments are given to their own local economies. Here, we do not even as much as have a team. We do not have a financial team, for instance, to say, how can we respond to a volatile economy such as this? We do not have that kind of response. You don't
think that the National Economic Council has been doing something in that direction?
Well, if you are doing something, the best way we can verify is to see what material difference it makes on the ground. And so far, you need a minister for finance to be in the vanguard of this kind of effort, and there is none. There is a very strong anti-corruption rhetoric at the center, and that's a good thing. But there is no minister for justice to give prosecutorial direction to that kind of rhetoric. So you see, there's a great deal of disjuncture between government.
A lot of people assume, you know, sorry to interrupt you, but, you know, yes, it might be a very, you know, valid part in terms of talking about corruption and talking about, you know, prosecution and the Ministry of Justice. Yes. But then some people also believe very strongly in the area of preventing. I think that's where Jonathan administration, if you speak with Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, you know, was saying that they were doing something in terms of trying to even prevent the act of corruption in the very first instance. Yeah. The TSA was something that was proposed in that administration, but didn't quite kick off until now. And you see that quite a number of people are complaining in terms of how its impact on liquidity in the banking sector. But a lot of people say that it's the way to go if the country is to understand just, you know, how much it actually earns. We're beginning to see banks being fined for trying to conceal government monies in some of the accounts within their system. Yeah. So do you think that government is also yet to appreciate just where it stands in terms of what it even earns on a normal day, aside, you know, whether or not crude oil prices have gone up or down, and what it can actually do or achieve with that with those monies?
These are the kind of specific questions you expect the Minister for Finance, the President's economic team, to speak to. And we do not have such a team. Where are we going to have them next week, 2 weeks, another month? Nobody knows. So the question is, we face crisis on almost every sector. And one would have expected by logical extension that this kind of crisis will animate the government to act more expeditiously. But we haven't seen that. Concerning anti-corruption, you would expect, as I said, that there will be a minister for justice to give prosecutorial direction. There has been no indictments. There has been so much talk about anti-corruption fight. I can understand the rhetoric. The APC ran a very effective campaign, before the elections. And after the elections, the people do not expect to get media headlines anymore. In fact, the kind of media headlines Nigerians, I suspect, want to see are that there have, in fact, been actual indictments, and this is the procedure for prosecution. There is no Minister for Finance. There's no Minister for Finance to deal with education.
Does it mean that those ministries, their permanent secretaries, can they drive some of these things? After all, the president was quoted to have said ministers are noisemakers. You have permanent secretaries, civil servants who've been there for 20, 25 years.
Yes.
These guys are the ones doing the real job.
Okay, well, why didn't you swear in the permanent secretaries then, as ministers? Why didn't you swear them in? The permanent secretaries remain there as civil servants. They call them civil servants for a reason. They do not ask questions. They simply implement what the government tells them to do. At the ministerial level, when they have cabinet meetings, that is where you see robust, I suspect, that's where you see robust debate from experts, from all kinds of people to say, Mr. President, this is your vision, we understand this. But we are on the ground, and these are the kind of realities we are contending with. And these are the kind of feelers we are getting from the civil servants do not have the benefit of their, because of the nature of their career, to give this kind of feedback. So what they do is simply to take orders. And
are we underestimating? We're not in a military system where the civil servants simply take orders without asking, because there's supposed to be a procedure. If your boss is asking you to do something wrong, I'm sure that the civil service provides ways you can report that boss.
Especially when there are no zombies.
Exactly. Are we underestimating the power of civil servants? Because I honestly, I don't know if you've had cause to use the airports in recent times. If there was an observance that it would seem that the flights are a little more on time, even those who were known to take forever in terms of boarding their passengers or even offering apologies were on time. And that's a sector where there are no ministers. Civil servants are still running the show. What exactly, to your mind? Well,
we have over 60% of young people unemployed in this country. No civil servant can respond to that. Only a minister for finance can respond to that. Only a minister for labor can respond to that. And if there are policy debates that need to be had in the cabinet, only ministers can have these debates with the president, not civil servants. You see, we have problems on a sector-by-sector basis. Civil servants, with all due respect and with all respect to their technocratic capabilities, cannot join the debate on how these policies can be driven on the ground. They simply do not have that kind of capacity to do that. Are they individually competent in what they do? Yes. But when it comes to driving policy, when it comes to having policy debates before the president, they simply do not have that kind of orientation. And that is why ministers come in, I think, where they can have this robust debate, they can go to project sites, they can have opinion polls, they can, have town hall meetings, and they can report directly to the president and say, these are the kind of things on the ground, and these are the kind of changes the people
But it would seem that even for the simplest things, just a moment, it's for the simplest things, you've always dependent on the ministers. Do you think that now we're beginning to appreciate what it is that even civil servants can do?
Well, the civil servants have done what they can do in the past 5 months, and we haven't seen a lot of difference.
We'll have to go. Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Austin Tam-George is Executive Director, Center for Communication Studies in Lagos, but is also a former research consultant for NEPAD in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.